Raise your hand if you're still working. Anybody else? Okay. Toda Rabah. Thank you very much. Toda Rabah. All right. Since I think we have someone remotely taking the quiz, we're not going to take the time to go over it in class right now. Let's pray. Take out your prayers for Tuesday. Adonai Yimachem. Nipalala. You should be following along with me because you're learning by doing that. So if you have it in front of you. Yihyu l'ratzon imrei fi, vahegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. Amen. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. All right. For today, I'm going to just tell you right now at the outset, at the beginning of this class, you probably will feel a little overwhelmed with today's class, but the main concept that I want to give you is that when you add endings, you start adding endings to words, which we have started to do now with the verb, suffixes, and the noun suffixes, right? The vowels can change. All right? So you're starting to see that already. You're starting to gather that. And the good news for us is that the changes that the vowels go through are regular. So that's the big idea, that there are regular vowel changes. Of course, there are always a few irregular things, but overall, it's very good for us that they're regular. And what I want to do for you today is to try to describe the regularity of these rules. It's okay if you don't get all the detail of it today. You probably won't, okay? So I want you to think about this chapter and the chart in chapter 2. Remember the vowel chart? I said, okay, keep this in mind. We'll come back to this. There's some stuff here that we haven't gotten into yet. Okay? Looks like this with some of my modifications. This is my souped up version of the chart. Think of these as references. Okay? If you think of a reference work as something you have to know, and that's a big burden to try to carry, okay, and it's frustrating. You just frustrate yourself. So I'm telling you, that you don't have to memorize all this right now, okay? The big idea, when you add endings to words, you modify them, the vowels change. But they change according to regular principles, all right? And then what I'm going to do is, and actually Futato's presentation, I think, is quite complex, because he's giving you kind of a catalog of examples of things. And so what I want to do is give you actually the principles by which those examples work out, and it'll make more sense of what he's doing there in this chapter. But you still might have some feelings like, I don't really understand this. It seems like a lot. It's so complicated. That's okay? But I'm not going to have you be producing forms. Really, this is for if you were trying to translate English into Hebrew, right? Which I had to do. I did a master's degree in Hebrew, and part of our master's exam was we got a passage in English and we had to translate it into biblical Hebrew. Okay, so some people do that. That's not what you're doing. That's not what's going to serve you, right? So mostly, except in the case of really, really important paradigms that you have to memorize, we're going to mostly be going from English into Hebrew. From Hebrew into English. Got to get this right. From Hebrew into English, because that's how we're going to use it, right? Is really working on that. Language is like a two-way street between languages. When you're moving from between one language and another, we're going on that one lane. We're going to really, make that a really nice, smooth lane is the best we can from Hebrew into English, because that's how we'll use it. Okay, is everybody with me on that? Because I know from teaching this is probably one of the most frustrating chapters to some students. Some students really love it and they get into that, but a lot of students feel overwhelmed. Okay, so it's my job to try to help you to say what's most important. Okay, and try to give you some categories to understand the detail. So, and I think that Futato does a great job overall of simplifying and giving you the most important ideas. If you pick up another Hebrew grammar and compare it, you'll start to see how, sometimes when we're starting off, it feels like a lot in Futato, but it's really, compared to other grammars, he's not giving the fire hose approach. This chapter is probably the chapter that comes the closest to that. But think of it as a reference work. You can come back to this chapter. You can come back to the vowel chart to try to understand these things. All right? Okay, so let's review our syllable principles, or things we know about syllables in Hebrew. Syllable is made up of the combination of consonants and vowels. And those syllables are building blocks then for words. What does a Hebrew syllable always begin with? Who can answer that question? What does a Hebrew syllable always begin with? I think I saw your finger. A consonant. That's right. Okay. So you get the next one, Ian. You might not want the next one. All right. How about this? What are the two types of syllables in Hebrew?
Open and close.
Open and close. Very good. So a syllable in Hebrew always begins with a consonant, never with a vowel. That's a change different with English. And there are only two types. Consonant, vowel, that's open. Consonant, vowel, consonant, that's closed. Those are the two types. Okay? All right. Then we also know that in Hebrew words, the accent or the stress in the word tends to be on which syllable? I'll give someone else an opportunity. Tyler.
The last syllable.
The last syllable, right? That's right. But when you're reading the Bible in English in public, you shouldn't go now and pronounce every word with the accent, every name with the accent on the last syllable, right? Because you're reading in English. So you want to strive for the most commonly used English pronunciation of that word. All right? I'm not thinking of anyone in particular here. It just happens every year. People are excited. It's great. They're learning this about Hebrew, and then they start to apply that pronunciation in their public reading. That's great, but that's really not how we should do public reading. It's in English. Most common pronunciation is what we're striving for there. But then when you refer to a Hebrew word, you want to be able to use the Hebrew pronunciation for that word and not mangle it, okay? So that's what I'm helping you with. All right. So now that we have these concepts, we need a couple more terms, a few more terms, to think about syllables in their relationship to the accent. Okay? Does anybody know what this is? What that means? It's an example we've used before, I believe.
Words.
Okay, Matthew?
Words.
Words. Davar means a word, singular. Dvarim mean words, plural. We see that nice masculine plural ending here, im. Okay, the accent is, I'm going to put it in here even though I don't typically do this to show where it is. Okay, why? Because it's the default. It's on the last syllable. So that is the stressed syllable. But now we want to think about how there are three syllables here. De, va, rim. Repeat after me. De, va, rim. Devarim. Okay? So open, what? Closed. Yeah, open, closed. We have three syllables here. Okay? This one has a vocal schwa in it. That's why we say de, because it's at the beginning of this syllable and the beginning of the word. So we call this the tonic syllable. Okay, the tone in the word is there on that syllable. The stress in the word is there, tonic. And then we have the pretonic syllable, the one before the stressed syllable. And then we have, wait for it, the pro-pretonic. And I think you say pro-pre because it's awkward to say pre-pre. The pre-pretonic. So you say, I think that's a case of differentiation, linguistic differentiation between those two. Pro-pre. The pro-pretonic is the pre-pretonic. It's the one before, or it's actually any syllable. Normally, in a Hebrew word, it's not going to get that long. But just imagine, say there was another syllable, it would be another pro-pretonic. It would be, we might call it the first pro-pretonic and the second pro-pretonic, the pretonic and the tonic syllables. So what these terms give us are ways to understand the relationship between syllables and each other, and syllables and the stress syllable or tonic syllable. Okay? Now, this isn't always going to be, it's usually going to be on the last syllable, but it's not always going to be, right? Sometimes it could be, the stress could be here, in which case these all move back. Right? So this isn't saying, tonic is not tied to the last syllable, though it usually is. It keys into the syllable that has the stress. All right? Everybody following that? Okay. Good. So the next step then is to start to think about, go back to this vowel chart here, okay? And this is on, I've written it up here for you. So what I want to do is we're going to be using this and looking at some examples over here. So we can see over here, we're referring to it, it's a reference, how vowels can change. They can't, at first it feels like it could become anything. It could be, it's so confusing, right? That's how it's going to feel to you. But actually it can't. There are only a few different ways that it can change. They're just a handful of principles of how it changed. And then depending on the vowel class, right, those are the classes, A, I, E, U, O classes. It can only change within those, all right? So let's come back to how I added to that chart that Futato gave you. One thing I did is I added this line, okay? So this line means that there's no movement from down here, these vowels, up to here, or from up here down to here. They are stable. All of those, and notice what they have in common. They have the helping letters. They have the vav and the yod, which are helping, showing us. So we have shurik as a vav, we have chirik yod as a yod, and we have cholim vav as a vav. So those are pure long or super long vowels. They're stable. They don't ever change. That's nice to know we have that going for us. So that's why I drew this line. I don't think that he has that. He doesn't have that. Or not a special line. There's boxes in the table, but there should be a darker line right there. Okay. The other thing that I added here are these arrows. See these purple arrows that I put in here? And that is to show you that a vowel can only change within its vowel class. And it could do one of two things. It can lengthen, can get longer in its vowel class, it can move up in that column, or it can reduce or get shorter in its vowel class and move down this. So if I had a kibbutz and it lengthened, it would lengthen always into a cholim. Right? If I lengthen that vowel, or if I reduce it, it has to go into a chatif kametz. See that? If I have a chirik or a segul and I'm lengthening it, it will become a tzere within its class. If I reduce it, it will become a chatif segul. So these. Remember, the function of the shva is to say no vowel, right? So it is also marking how short these are. These are super short vowels. If these are the super long, these are the super short, or very short according to Futato's language, okay? Because they're actually vowel-flavored shvas. Just like a little taste of the vowel is there. That's what, but because see, it has that shva, so the Masoretes are telling us it's really no vowel, okay, but also there's a little bit of a flavor there, vowel aftertaste or something. Okay, come over here. If we have a patach, which is a short A-class vowel, if it lengthens, lengthen into a kametz. Or if it reduces, it's going to reduce into a chatif patach. Okay, you see how that works? So the two things it can do, it can lengthen or it can reduce. And it could be up here, and it's going to, if it reduces, if a cholim reduces, it's going to reduce down to a chatif kametz. If a tzere reduces, it's going to reduce down to a chatif segul kametz to a chatif patach. Okay? So this is a reference, this chart, and this is gonna help us now. So what I want to do now is I want to give you the big principles. So first of all, I'm going to tell you what is stable, what doesn't change. Long vowels and closed syllables are stable. All right? What do I mean by long vowels? What Futato calls these long vowels here with the helping letters are always stable. They don't move. They don't change when you add endings or prefixes. All right, so long vowels and closed syllables like this one, okay? A consonant, vowel, consonant. You think about it, I like to think about it, it's like, it's a unit, it's strong, okay? But if it doesn't have one of those consonants on it, it's weakened by the lack of the second consonant, and it's stable, it can be changed around, okay? That vowel is susceptible to change. But when it's closed, it's nice and tight and stable, okay? So that's the first thing. It's not that everything changes. Long vowels and closed syllables, so you can have, right, long vowels and open syllables are going to be stable. So it's really open, open syllables with any of these other vowels. That's what we're talking about when we talk about vowel changes. You follow that? Ready with me? Okay. Then the next rule is pre-tonic syllables lengthen. Okay, that is when they don't fall into this category, right? So this applies to all these. If they're not in this category, if they're open with one of these other vowels, then they lengthen. So pre-tonic being the syllable before the accent. And by lengthening, I'm talking about this movement within their vowel class up to longer vowels. Okay? Got that? And number 3, pro-pretonic syllables reduce. Okay? So, like this one, actually this is an example of it. Look at this. Okay? So, it's a closed syllable and it's a long vowel here. That's very stable. Okay, and it's stressed. So, this is really stable. Pretonic lengthens. Look at this. It's the longest it can be within its class. Comments. See that? And number 3, pro-pretonic syllables reduce. Okay, it's reduced down to, and I should say this. It can be just a simple schwa. So let's put that in there to make this complete. Because a lot of times it's just going to go to a regular schwa, not a chata. Okay, so that's what we have here. That this is what was originally a comments in the word davar, right? This is our singular form. See that? Comments. That comments has reduced because it's an pro-pretonic syllable, and it reduced down to a schwa. You see how that works? So we can take the absolute form, the dictionary form, which is the masculine singular form of a noun, and then attach endings to it, and then use these principles to figure out how the vowels will work out. Knowing that these are 2 A-class vowels, right? You see that comments is in the A-class category. We have 2 A-class vowels. When we add on the ending, one's going to lengthen, or it's actually going to stay long, because this is as long as it can go in that category, and the other one's going to reduce down to a schwa, because it's now an pro-pretonic syllable once the ending is added on. So these are the major principles that explain all the forms that he's categorizing for you in the chapter. So if you go back through that, it helps to make sense of what he's talking about when he gives you all these different categories. I hope this is going to be helpful for you. And then once we understand this, we're going to use some examples to try to see how it works and how we can work it out. Kind of like doing a language problem, doing a math problem, of working it out according to the rules. Gregory?
So for the nouns which don't have the accent on the last syllable, does
Uh-huh.
that affect any of the other syllables after it? So you have the whole set of rules for those syllables that happen before the end of the syllable. But on those words that are exceptional and have the syllable right in the front, or not the final one,
Yeah.
does it affect any of the vowels to going to the left?
No, these rules don't affect that. Yeah, that it is. We're going to see an example of it. A whole class of nouns called segulates. It depends on what it is after it. So if we have an ending, it just follows the pattern of that ending. We have other endings that we haven't learned yet. So let's look at. We're going to have an example within this chapter of where there's a syllable after the accent, and it's different depending on the word, but it doesn't work by these rules. Yeah. Okay. Good question. That's a really good question. So that's my best way to answer it right now without getting the things we haven't covered yet. Any questions about this? So obviously, write this down. This is. I hope I'm trying to give you the gold. This is the gold right here of this for this chapter. This is the summary of these principles and how it works. All right.
Sorry, I have one more kind
Yeah.
of question. So in its root form, that the dollop has the T, whatever it's called, I don't remember the name. It doesn't reduce down to the T with a schwa, all the way down to the schwa. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, comments.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, comment, sorry. All right.
Yeah, it took me a little bit to get caught. So you mean the vowel comments?
Right.
You have two comments. Yeah.
Right. The first one, when you add the plural ending, reduces all the way down to the point where it's gone.
Right. It's not going to go down to a patach, right? Yeah. When that's so. Yeah. That.
You only have the two dots there, which means that you don't have any trace. According to this, you have no trace of that.
Correct.
Ending left.
That's correct. Yeah. So when it. Yeah. When either this what Futada calls medium or short, when they reduce down to here. They don't. It's not like it goes down to here. Does that make sense? This is reduced. When it reduces, it comes down to here. So any lengthened vowel is going to be up here. Any reduced vowel is going to be down here. Okay, let's do some examples of it. Does anybody have an example you want to do, or do you want me to pick some? We've pretty much done davar now.
How about your Bott, the daughter? Is that the Bott?
It's irregular, so let's not use a regular one. Let's start with some regular ones. So good. Let's see. Let's do levav. Let's do the long form of part. Okay. So we have. And I like it because we have two different vowel classes. So what class is this? Or what is this vowel? What is the vowel first? What's that? The vowel. Oh. The consonant is a lamed. That's right, but I'm asking, what is the vowel? Serre. Serre, and it makes the A sound. What is this vowel? Gregory? Comments. Comments. That I asked you because we were just talking about that one.
Short-term memory.
You're getting it. You'll get it. You'll get it. Comments. Okay, so we have two vowel classes. So what vowel class is the Terry? Okay, i.e., what vowel class is the comments? A class. Okay. So now we're going to add on an ending, and levav happens to be feminine. So what ending is the feminine plural? Oat. Okay, oat. Okay, so now let's do this. How many syllables do we have? No, I mean, we have 3 because this is the closed syllable and then we have 2 open ones. Okay, so this is, what's the name of this syllable within the word? Tonic, okay? Pretonic, propretonic, okay? So the tonic syllable is stable, right? You got it? It's not only that, it has a long vowel in it, so it's stable and closed, okay? So this A-class vowel, what does the pretonic vowel do? Lengthens, okay? Can it lengthen any more than it comments? Nope. It's reached the ceiling. Okay, so it's going to stay as a comment. Okay, sere is in the propretonic syllable. What's a propretonic syllable going to do? It's going to reduce. So we come to our category here. Sere, it reduces to a schwa. And then, so the plural of levav is levavot. Repeat after me. Le-va-vot. Levavot. Good. So that's, see how this works? How we can take the dictionary form that we learned, and then we can attach the noun endings that we've now learned, and then we can figure out what's going to happen to these vowels in the word according to these principles. Ian?
There's something I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
When you wrote just the consonants
Yeah.
without adding the vowels, how did you know that it was 3 syllables just by looking at the consonants?
Yeah, maybe I should have, another way I could have done it is I could just take these vowels into the short form, and then we could do the vowel changes. That's would be another way to hold as placeholders. Because it's maybe it was kind of confusing. I know from this that there are 2 vowels here. So it was on the basis of that I was making that. So, I was expecting we could just look here and see there are 2 vowels. There still are those 2 vowels, okay? So either just doing it by knowing there are 2 vowels there, or you could, if you need a placeholder, like an intermediate stage, like if we could write out each of these stages in how we're developing it, we could put an intermediate stage where I had a patach and say a chirik. Then I could lengthen this one and reduce this one. I could do that. But those are just placeholders telling me what vowel class it is, and then I'm going to apply those rules. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Matthew?
So if propretonic syllables always reduce and the shortest form is always the she, is there ever going to be a time where propretonic syllable is not anything other than the Shiva? I think is what that is.
Schwa?
Schwa, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it can be. For example, if it was a long vowel in a propretonic syllable, then it's going to still be a long vowel. Or if it was a closed syllable, you could have a closed syllable with a chirik in it, a short vowel. Closed syllables tend to like short vowels, so you could have, but it's basically going to be, it's going to fall into this category. So I put these in this order on purpose. I could say, I could say pretonic open syllable. It's already found in this principle, but it's really in open syllables that don't have long vowels that these things take place.
But if it reduces, is it ever going to reduce to anything other than a schwa?
It can reduce to the chatif.
Oh, it can.
Yeah.
I guess we'll learn when that happens.
Yeah. That's why this is. But I put this over here to say it's usually going to be a schwa, but sometimes it can be the chatif.
Okay, cool.
Good question. Okay, Gregory.
So, if you were to put your article in front of that,
Yeah.
does that affect the vowel at all?
No. No, and the article isn't,
Putting a strong dog is.
yeah, the article doesn't count as a proprietonic syllable, for example, so that's a good question. Yeah, it's not gonna reduce or something like that, okay, because it's just an article, it just follows the article rules that we learned before, which is that normally you add a patah, strong dagesh to it, except if it begins with a guttural, and then it could either lengthen or just stay the same. So those are the rules for the article, and these rules don't affect it. These are only the vowels within the noun that are being affected. Okay, good. Yeah, so I mean, here, I would just, if I wanted to say the hearts, I would just do that. Add my article, got it. Except for I changed these vowels and they're incorrect now, but.
So it does affect the vowels.
The ending affected the vowels.
Okay.
Actually, this is not a very good example, but we have, yeah, so the answer to the question is, without getting into something else, is the article follows its own rules.
Okay.
So these rules only affect the vowels within the noun and how those vowels change. Yep, Ignacio.
I have a question.
Good.
Is the lengthening or reducing always by one step? Because I noticed from Tsere we went to Shava. Do we ever go from medium to short, or is it always medium to very short, and vice versa?
Only in cases where a closed syllable is formed would you get a shift going right here. So usually, that's why I said earlier, usually when you reduce, you come down here. Regardless of whether it is short or medium, if it's too reduced, it will come down here, and if it's too lengthened, it will come up here. Yeah, there would be some times when a closed syllable is being formed in the word. And there's another rule or principle that closed syllables prefer short vowels. And so you can end up with that. But I don't want to complicate things too much with that right now. So that's a good question. Does that make sense?
Sure.
That's why I say I put reduce right here. It stays within this, but it doesn't have to go, by each step, as it were. If it's reducing, it's going to be down here, and if it's lengthening, it's going to be up here. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Micah.
I'm still unclear about which sort of reduction vowel it becomes, whether it's a shava or the other one, and how you know. Because you knew really quickly, like, oh yeah, this lamed, I put a shava.
Yeah, I mean, there were only, because usually it's going to be shava. That's why I needed to put this in here. Which he doesn't have that on his chart, so that's another change. Because he's just giving you the classes. I want to use this chart for an additional purpose, which is to show how the vowel changes can work. And so that's why I needed to add this in here. So generally, this is going to be the case. Now, another rule, I believe we haven't learned it yet, of the gutturals is that they don't like the shva. They're very picky, these gutturals. They don't like the strong dagesh. They don't like the shva. Okay, so that would be a case, if it was in a guttural, that would be a case where it would become a chataf vowel, chataf comments in this case. So there are cases where, but that's the exception. It's a smaller group where it's going to become one of these. Usually it's going to be over here.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Or also some cases, so there are a few other cases where why it would be a chataf. But first we just need to know, I think, shva. And think of these as a type of shva. That's also what I'm saying. Okay? All right. So let's look at one more example that fits into this. I think it was Matthew's question. Could it be something else? Let's look at mizbeach. Mizbeach means an altar. Okay, mizbeach. Yeah, mizbeach. Okay? So let's divide this into syllables. Okay? We actually have 2 syllables here. Okay? Because look, we have a consonant, vowel, consonant, and this schwa is marking the end of that syllable. Okay? So here we have a closed syllable at the beginning. And then we have a closed syllable at the end. Now, we talked about this quickly. Might have been last class. Fairly recently, we talked about this. Look at this patach. It's sneaking over here to the side. That's that sneaky patach. Anybody know? Remember what we called it? The name of it is?
Furtive.
Furtive. It's a furtive patach. It's a sneaky patach. It's sneaking over there. It's actually not. This is the actual main vowel here in this syllable, the tsere. Okay, but when certain vowels precede gutturals, it creates an awkward situation in Hebrew. They don't like that sound. They don't like the transition of those sounds. And so they add in this patach, this ah sound, because that's a very comfortable way to go into the guttural. So you get what appears to be 2 vowels in a row here, which is an unusual situation in Hebrew, but really this is a helping vowel. It's just a helping sound to help out this vowel, which is the main vowel in this syllable. So you pronounce the patach on this side of the consonant, not on this side. So it's not, and you'll be tempted to look at it and say, beha, beha. But it's not. The ah is on this side. Be'ach, be'ach. And you also don't accent this. So the accent, it's like I say, it's not really a full-fledged vowel. It's just a helper here. It's coming in and helping. So it's be'ach. The accent is on this tsere. But it's its own closed syllable. So here we have a word that consists of 2 closed syllables. Okay? So right now, it's very stable. 2 closed syllables are stable. But we're going to add on an ending, which is going to change it. Okay? And it's also feminine. So we're going to do this. Knees. I'm going to put I'll just keep this vowel in there for the time being. To hold that place. So oat ending, okay? So now we have 1 syllable here that's closed. Be is open. That's got to have a weak dagesh in it. And then chot is closed. So this is the tonic syllable, and it's closed. It's stable. Okay. This is a closed syllable. It's stable. According to our first rule, closed syllables are stable. So we're really only dealing with this this syllable, and normally this would normally this, according to in the pretonic syllable, would lengthen. Now we're going to get into an issue here with this one, because it actually is reducing. Sorry about that. And that's because it's an I-class vowel. So we can have, see, it's in this column. So this is gonna undercut a little bit, but it's an exception because it's an I-class vowel in that position. So that's how you get mizbachot. Mizbachot. So, sorry to use an exception there on that one. So, in general, though, these principles are going to hold, even if in a case like that, it turns out to be a schwa. So, then we know that we have our rule of 2 schwas together. First one is sound, the second one is vocal. Mizbachot. Let's see. I should have used mishpat, which is a similar case. So I'll show you mishpat. Okay, mishpat, judgment, two closed syllables. Okay, I'm going to add a masculine ending because it's masculine. So mish pa tim. Okay, so I created this new closed syllable. It's stable, accented. That's not. I'm not going to have that. This is an A-class vowel. It's going to lengthen in a pretonic syllable, which means it's already as long as it can be. And then we have a closed syllable that's stable. So we have a short vowel here in this case. So this is an example that illustrates what we're talking about here. Mishpatim. Repeat after me. Mishpatim. Okay, so you're starting to see there are some more details kind of under the surface here. There is some more complexity, but it's not to your interest to get into that too much right now. Okay, it's to start to learn these big ideas. Okay, so the big ideas for today. One, if you add endings to a noun, the vowels can change, but those vowels change according to certain principles. The biggest ones, not the only ones, there are some others, but the biggest ones are long vowels and closed syllables are stable. So those are the ones that aren't going to change. Pretonic syllables, for the most part, are going to lengthen, and propretonic syllables are going to reduce. Okay? So, and then think about this chapter and the vowel chart as references that you can go back to. You're not trying to cram it all in your mind. It's too much at this point. But this, I think, is reasonable to get this amount. Okay? And again, I'm not going to be asking you to be writing in Hebrew, so you're not going to have to be producing forms this way. So that's why if you did, then we'd have to do a lot more of this. And actually, one of the grammars that I started using, every chapter had composition in Hebrew. So as the practices, part of the practices that you do at every chapter is to do the kinds of things you're doing, but also always to go from English into Hebrew as well. So that would be a lot, you can tell that would take a lot more time and be a lot more challenging if we had to do that, okay? So now in the time remaining, I want to do two things. I want to go over this noun group called the segolate nouns, and it's going to provide an example of the cases where, a case where the accent's not on the last syllable. What does the noun do? Okay, so that'll be one illustration of what Gregory was asking about, and also to go over our vocabulary for today. We want to make sure to have time to do that. All right. So there is. Let me get some space up here. There's a class of nouns that have segles in them. Okay, and that's how they get their name, segolate. They're nouns with segles. They're known for these segles in them, right? And they have some characteristics in common. One of the most common, a word I like to use as an example, is the word melech. Melech means king. Okay, so it's just got that funny schwa in the kaf, but melech has two segles in a row, and the accent, as we've learned, is on the first syllable. Repeat after me. Melech.
Melech.
Okay, so these, in their typical form, these segolate nouns have these two characteristics. One is that they have two segles, and two, that they have the accent on the first syllable. Now, this is worth learning about because it is an exception to the rule that the accent falls on the last syllable. But here's a class, rather than thinking, oh, there are all these examples, treating them as individuals, we know that there's this class of noun, one pattern of noun, that breaks that rule and has the accent on the first syllable. And they follow certain patterns themselves. Okay? Now, other examples, eretz, land, derech, way, nefesh, soul. Okay, they all have accent on the first syllable, two segles. Now, so far, what's the rule that we've learned about the gutturals? When it comes to, I just mentioned one that is getting ahead of us, but the gutturals follow certain characteristics of their own as a group, right? What is the one as it relates to the dogish that we know? Ian?
They don't take a strong dogish.
They don't take a dogish. They don't like dogish. They're not in the Begad Kafat letters, so they don't take a weak dogish, and they don't like the strong dogish. They reject it. Okay, so we already had to deal with that because with the article, for example, okay, you have to deal with these gutturals that don't want to play by the rules. Another characteristic of the guttural, actually, that we saw in Mizbeach, in fact, we saw this principle that they prefer A-class vowels. Okay, which is mostly going to be, it's often patach, okay, in the A-class category. They prefer that. Why? Because the A-class vowels in Hebrew come from the same neighborhood, so they're very they're kind of prejudiced in that way, that they are prejudiced toward the people who come from their own neighborhood. Or the sounds that come from their own neighborhood, I should say. So because is made in the same part of the throat, that's why that furtive patach was used to smooth the transition from the tzeri to the guttural chet. So that is because of this principle. Gutturals prefer A-class vowels under them or even before them, in the syllable before them. So we have a word like this. It's accent on the first syllable, but it has patach here. And this is the word na'ah. Repeat after me. Na'ah.
Na'ah.
Means a boy, yeah, a youth. Remember David? I think I will talk about this when we get to 1 Samuel. But David, when he took on Goliath, was not a toddler. He was not a little baby or something. He was a young man, an adolescent young man. Okay? He was a na'ah. Okay, but this is a segolate without any segles. There's a reason why it doesn't have any segles, okay? So it has the accent on the first syllable here, just like melech. But look at this. What is that? Okay, what letter is it? What consonant? Ayin is a guttural, okay? So the reason it's not using segles in this case is because of this guttural's influence. Because remember, the second characteristic of the gutturals is that they prefer A-class vowels. They don't like the other vowel classes. And so we have A-class vowels, the patach, under and before it. Na'ah. And they're there to help out, this finicky guttural that's in the middle of the word. Okay, and another example that we have is zevach. Zevach is nice, it has at least one guttural. Right? What does zevach mean? Sacrifice, okay? So it's got the accent on the first syllable. It has the first seggle, but it doesn't have the second. And it's because this guttural is in this position. See that? The guttural right here. Okay? So it's just influencing this vowel to be a class pata. Okay, so as odd as it sounds, you can have sibilate nouns that don't have sibilants, but it's under the influence of gutturals.
Would you mind saying why it's only the second one? That's
In this one,
uh-huh.
well, notice the guttural's in a different position.
Hmm.
So this guttural's here, so it's influencing both of these. It's not likely that it's going to be influencing all the way out here. And again, the way I say it is gutturals prefer, notice that it's not, I'm not saying it as an ironclad rule, but they prefer under them or before them, meaning that there can be some variation there, but if you see where you're getting the A-class vowel where you wouldn't expect it, then you're going to see that you might find a guttural there that's influencing this vowel, like in this case. So the difference between these, I think, is largely because of the guttural position. The guttural here is in the last letter, and it's influencing this.
Just the immediate.
The one before it, under and before it. So this is not under, neither under nor before it, right? It's too far to the cycle. But segolate nouns were originally monosyllabic words. So the original word for malak was malak, and probably nab and zev. But the second segel came in historically. Ooh, barehanded. Wow, what a man. The second segel came in to help it out. Because that is, during this stage of Hebrew, we have a system that's based on three-letter roots, right? So it's odd, it feels odd during this stage of Hebrew to have these monosyllabic, and to have these consonant clusters like mulk. Okay? So that's there's a historical reason why these are a class of noun. There's a history of Hebrew before the time we know it in the Hebrew Bible, and there's history afterwards, because languages have histories and they change over time. Back for more. In the plural, and I don't want to take the time because I want to make sure we have time to do our vocabulary here, but in the plural, they have a different form. Because you're probably thinking, okay, well, what's the plural form here? If this is, we have these weird words that have the accent on the first syllable, and this question about that, but they actually become bisyllabic, two-syllable words.
You're saying most words that have that accent on the first syllable are going to fall into the segolate thing. It's because of the root and such.
Most nouns that have this pattern, accent on the first syllable, and they usually have segol. This is a rule about them, that in their plural form, they actually have they don't have the accent on the first syllable anymore. They follow the rules that we've been learning. So maybe I'll look at. I don't have time to do it all up on the board, but let's look at beged, garment. On page 45, the first example under 816, beged means a garment. Okay, beged, accent on the first syllable. It's a classic segolate. Beged. But we don't take beged with the accent on the first syllable to form the plural. It's actually, the rule is that the segolate it has the same three consonants, but has two A-class vowels. And then you add the plural ending to that, so, which is nice, because then our rules apply, and it's completely regular. Even though the singular form is anomalous, or it's unique, the plural form is very regular. So we are going to treat it as if it's bagad, and then add the ending, im, which we have, then we'll have pretonic lengthening and propretonic reduction, and we get begadim. See how that works? Follows those rules, and it's as if we had two A-class vowels. Derech becomes derachim, same thing, follows the same pattern. Zebach becomes zebachim, same rule, follows the same rules, same pattern. Okay. So the plural of segolate, we treat it like the base form before we add the ending, as if it had two A-class vowels and the accent was on the last syllable rather than on the first. So it becomes regular English. All right? Okay. There are some vowel changes you only know just by learning the word. That's going to be inevitable. That there are certain things you just, irregularities they don't follow a pattern, so the only way you know it is by knowing that word is said that way. So it gives you some examples of that. But let's take our last 5 minutes with the vocabulary list then. Page 46. Okay. Aha! Prepositions. Remember last time I was telling you about L, that L in this discussion. L is different than Ale. Ale is God. L is the preposition. Okay? Because we're going to talk about prepositions next time. And look at the right-hand column, the top one. Repeat after me, L.
L.
L is a preposition that means to, for, the sake of. Repeat after me, this next one, it's a bait with a vocal shot, it's B. Repeat after me, B. Now you see that little dash there? It's not a mockade. It's not a mockade, but it's telling us that this preposition is attached to the front of a word.
What do you do, Father?
Let me see here. I'm seeing things. Aha, make a dash.
Make it that.
Make a little dash to the left of it. I think the previous owner of this book put that in, or maybe the current owner. Yeah, I must have added that. So I want you to add it. That's the thing, because what that tells you is that this we're going to learn next time. There are prepositions can be attached to the front of the noun or the verb, but right now we're just going with the noun. Okay. And so L stands on its own. It's its own word, but B is so short. It's a prefix. It's added onto the front of a word. So put a little dash to the left, showing that that one is attached. Okay? Does everybody make sense? Everybody? Okay. There are very few. We'll talk about this next time. There are very few prepositions in Hebrew, so these prepositions do lots of different functions. We have lots of prepositions in English, but there are very few in Hebrew, so they have to get a lot of use out of them. So this can mean in, at, with, and some other things. But always remember in your vocabulary learning, start with the left-hand meaning. That's the most common. So in is the most common meaning of the preposition. Good. Repeat after me. Betoch.
Betoch.
Within. Notice that it has the bait preposition on the beginning of it, like in. Right? You can see the relationship to in, within. Okay, this is standalone. There's no dash here. Next one, repeat after me. K.
Good.
Put a little dash to the left of that to show that it's attached to a word. It means like, as, or according to. Repeat after me. Look. Put a hyphen or dash next to it on the left, showing that this one is attached as well. It means to or for. Okay, left-hand column. Repeat after me. Lifnei. Means before. Repeat after me. Min. From. So these are prepositions that aren't attached. They stand on their own. Repeat after me. All. On account of. So if I say Shalom Aleichem, I'm saying peace be all upon you, means peace be upon you. The cha is a preposition, is a pronoun that we haven't learned yet, but all, you hear the all, peace be all upon you. Repeat after me. Im. Im means with. And finally, this accent on the first syllable, repeat after me. Tachat. Tafat means under or beneath. Any questions about that vocabulary? These are all prepositions. We're learning them because the next chapter will cover them. Thank you. Can I have your practices, please? I'm just trying to save you some time.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if that, maybe it's, I see what you're saying. What you just added about.
I have one.
Oh, if you wrote it all underneath there.
Some part of the house.
Doesn't matter, yeah, that's fine.
I'm
Just trying to, yeah, I'm trying to help you out there. Mark? Yeah, sure.
Is this, how do you find this? Is it like black slave?
Yes.
I'm gonna get one, but I don't know the bucket tomorrow.
No.
I'm good.
Like this. You go down one and you say, oh, wire
I'm pretty proud of
shorts.
you.
Check yourself out.
I'm gonna have a nightmare.
That's like putting down one leg so that you have it.
Please don't.
Right.
I'm gonna do it.
No, I have it like this.
Oh, man, I can see that.
You didn't cover them, but you just checked to see.
Visualizing.
Yeah, so that's, I think that's how he intends it to be done, is just to cover it and then go down. And I was talking to Gregory about this, but these answers are not in the key because the
That's right.
answers are given right in the exercise. So
Yeah,
in that case, you don't need to go get.
I thought, because earlier he didn't have them in the key and he just had us pronounce it. And then we had to cover it
To write in there.
to pronounce it, and so we didn't write anything earlier.
Oh, that's kind of weird. So you said in these, you wouldn't have gotten it in these three cases? Do you have a marker, is that from the back?
No, that was, I just checked here, like I looked at that and I said that means remember.
So you just reviewed it.
I just reviewed it and I said, okay.
That's fine.
That's what he thought.
That's fine. Does that, does it make sense how he?
That's, okay, yeah. And you want
And then-
this actually already. But it's
You
not-
don't have to write.
Other people wrote. That's not other people. wrote.
Yeah, you can or you don't have to.
Okay.
You could just do it in your.
Yeah.
In your own mind. You could do it in your mind. It's probably better if you covered it and then you wrote it on a piece of paper.
Right.
I think actually, like, if you had the piece of, you
Yeah.
had it and you wrote it and
And
then
you
you
wrote
moved
it,
it
yeah.
down and then you could just check between those two.
That
and
would
wrote
probably
it down like
Yeah,
that. But we'll be flexible because
Okay.
we know that
Alright.
there's different ways to do that.
I'll write it in the.
I wish he explained how
Yeah.
he intended that to work, but
Right.
I think it's, once you see, oh, okay, that's what he meant.
I think like in all the homework this week was, or for today was like that. It's like just here's the answers and then.
Good, it's just it's a gift to you.
It's like, yeah, I know.
Receive the gift.
I will receive. Yeah.
I think I'm still, you can stop it. I think I'm still rolling.